Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Walk and Talk, the podcast designed for people who are just a little bit obsessed with their dogs and love learning more about how they tick and what's going on under the bonnet, and of course lots of tips, tricks and training hacks that might make their lives together just a little bit less stressful and all the more fabulous. If you don't already know, my name is Lisa. I am a multi-award winning dog trainer and total behaviour nerd. And I love nothing more than getting inside this headset every single week and chatting all things dog with you guys. So thank you very much for coming back and allowing me to do that yet again. So, okay, today I want to talk about an idea that has been really doing the rounds in the dog training world for the past, I want to say, it's more than 5 years, like 8 years, I guess. Maybe not quite a decade, I don't know. And I'm going to refer to it as concept training, and you may well have already heard of this. You may not. If you haven't, don't worry. We're going to get into it today. But also know that it is a more generalized idea that exists outside of the specific industry personalities, shall we say, who I think originally started referring to this idea as concept training. I think, ultimately as professionals and individuals building our own businesses, we are always looking for unique ways to develop our toolkits and market ourselves to our clients. And thus concept training was labeled up the way it was by some emerging personalities in the industry, just under a decade ago, perhaps, let's say. And that's what I'm going to dive into today, the ideas behind it, why I'm such a big fan of it, and how you can incorporate it into your own training approach with your dog. So let's get into it. Okay, concept training was basically massively popularized by a couple of individuals who worked together. They were in business together pre-COVID. And if you are familiar with this already, or you are familiar with those individuals, just to get this out of the way at the top of this episode, this podcast episode is not about those people as individuals. It's just about the dog training, okay? Because I'm really not into speculation or gossip or dramatizing the ins and outs of anything that may or may not have gone down. Personally, I find the dog training industry, and actually, to be honest, I know this happens across so many industries, when you're an entrepreneur especially, but I do find this industry can be incredibly toxic and aggressive. And there are certain very big names in it that spend far more time attacking other industry professionals than they do actually to just talking about dogs. I'm really not about that life. I'm not interested in people's behavior. That's up to them. But I'm very interested in dog behavior. So just to caveat this episode, that's where I'm going to keep the focus. Okay, right, on with it. So essentially, concept training flips the traditional model of dog training on its head. So think of it like this, right? Most basic training teaches behaviors like sit, stay, leave it, heel, all those essentials that you remember from puppy class, most likely. These are like surface level apps running on your dog's operating system, but concept training looks directly at the operating system itself and says, what if we could make changes right here at this level? What if their emotional brain, their decision-making software is what actually needs the upgrade? So concept training actually asks us to zoom right out and first of all ask, what kinds of concepts is your dog rehearsing every day? And that looks like, asking yourself, are they practicing calmness? Are they practicing confidence, flexibility? Or are they actually getting really good at concepts like frustration, reactivity, impulsivity? And then instead of firefighting the behaviors that come off the back of those, we actually focus on shaping those core concepts. And then those concepts drive the future behaviors. So if that all sounds a bit like gibberish, here's a simple analogy, okay? if you want a child to succeed in school, you can either tell them to sit still, to be quiet, and to do their homework. You can just tell them to do those things. Or you can work on the underlying skills required that mean that that child is naturally going to succeed. And in this scenario, those would be focus, maybe resilience, definitely curiosity. So instead of teaching our child how to sit still and stay quiet, we actually concentrate on growing a really curious mind. Because with a curious mind, well, they're going to sit still and listen, aren't they? And they're going to ask questions and they're going to enter that classroom with enthusiasm. Do you see the difference in the approaches? And it's exactly the same for dogs. Concept training says, let's develop the dog's mindset, not just their movements. Okay, are we ready to talk brain science for a split second? Because at the heart of concept training is the principle of neuroplasticity. And this refers to the brain's ability to rewire itself based on experience. So when a dog repeatedly rehearses a response like barking when startled or pulling toward another dog on the lead, the brain builds stronger neural pathways for that behavior. It becomes the default choice for those situations. But the goal of concept training is to come in and interrupt those rehearsals and replace them with new ones. So if your dog regularly practices calmness, the neural pathways for those calm behaviors strengthen, and then that becomes their new default behavior choice. Another key area we try to work with in concept training is the limbic system, particularly the amygdala, which you'll have heard me reference many, many times. It's your dog's emotional processing center, or as I have called it many times, Captain Panic. And dogs who are anxious, reactive, or over aroused often have a hyperreactive amygdala coupled up with not so great prefrontal cortex regulation. So their brain is flooded with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And concept training helps build emotional regulation by working through safe, reinforcing games that stimulate the prefrontal cortex, where impulse control, decision making, and focus live. And by playing games that require thinking, choice, and self-control, we literally strengthen the brain's ability to regulate itself. Now, on the surface, without knowing all this, concept training can look and seem just a bit weird, right? Because we might take a nervous dog or a reactive dog, and instead of just going out there and teaching them to walk to heel or to sit on command or whatever to prevent them freaking out at the other dogs, we actually end up teaching them to put their front feet up on a box or to weave between our legs or to walk figure of eights, whatever it is. And you think, well, what the hell has doing that got to do with the problem we're actually trying to solve here? He barks at dogs. And it's because we're trying to reshape what's going on behind the scenes. We're trying to get straight to work in the dog's brain because that's the thing that's controlling everything else ultimately. So if I have a dog who barks outside because he's nervous, I can either teach him a be quiet cue, might work, or I can give that dog owner 10 games and exercises designed to grow his confidence. And that's the difference between a basic obedience training and concept training. It's not magic, it's literally just neurobiology, basically. So, what concepts then are we actually talking about here? So here are a few of the most important ones, okay? So first up, we have calmness, and probably the most foundational one, because a calm dog is ultimately a thinking dog. And calmness games might involve teaching your dog to settle on a bed or to disengage from excitement or to wait before doing something fun. The goal isn't just stillness. We're not looking at it mechanically. It's about achieving regulated arousal. Okay. Next, we have impulse control, often referred to as proximity tolerance or frustration tolerance. Can your dog resist lunging at something exciting? Can they pause before grabbing a toy? And there are so many games and fun ways to grow this skill gently and progressively. And who is this going to help? Well, reactive dogs is a big one. The dogs who explode because they have zero tolerance for frustration or stress. Well, this is one way we can help them build up that tolerance. Okay, third up is optimism. And this one is also a game changer for reactive or fearful dogs because optimistic dogs approach novelty with curiosity rather than fear. They're not always presuming the worst, they're not constantly scanning for threat, and they're not coiled to react. And to build this, there are loads of games like noise desensitization activities, teaching unexpected object interactions, and just introducing novelty exercises, right? To name a few. In fact, if you want to learn more about the kinds of games and activities you can try to build each of these key concepts I'm talking about in this episode, because there are so many. I have a design your own dog training pack on my website, and it is literally jam packed with activities, more than 30 inside. I think it might be 32. It's definitely more than 30. With full step-by-steps and tracking sheets. And at the top of each page, it literally tells you the concepts that particular exercise or game would help you to work on. So let's say, I don't know, you have decided you want to grow your dog's optimism because you have a particularly fearful or nervous dog. You can literally go through, you can pick out all the games that say optimism at the top, and then there you go. That's what you're going to work on. You've got your list of games, you've got your instructions for each, and you've got a tracker to make sure you're progressing. 10 minutes every evening after work, playing those games, and you're no longer just mindlessly throwing your dog's tug toy across the room to entertain them, but you're actually helping them to develop a positive shift in their behavior over time. If you are interested, it's on my website, listendogtraining.com. I'll leave a link in the show notes. And remember, you can use the code podcast10, which will also get you 10% off. Anyway, next up, where are we? Number 4? Let's say number 4 is focus. So can your dog stay connected to you when the world gets exciting? And this concept is usually trained through movement games, pattern games, and choice-based reinforcement. And finally, and I say finally, there are oodles of concepts, but we don't have all day, do we? So finally, for the purposes of this episode, we have flexibility. So can your dog switch from one task to the other, or do they really lock in and fixate? Can they cope when the routine changes, when you travel somewhere new, when they have to sleep somewhere different, when you're ill and you can't walk them for a day or two, maybe? Training flexibility prevents these obsessive behaviors, and it just builds resilience to change, which is never a bad thing, is it? And ultimately, each of these concepts and many more that I haven't mentioned, they feed into the kind of dog who can cope with the world that we ask them to live in, and the kind of relationship between you and your dog where training doesn't feel like a battle, but life just becomes a collaboration. And wouldn't we all like it to feel like that with our dogs, right? Okay, so now let's get practical. What does this actually look like? Well, you will be delighted to know it is ridiculously easy and fun to get involved in because for the most part, it just looks like games. Short, strategic, movement-based activities that build brain skills without just having to drill commands. So for example, a dog who struggles with getting overexcited around visitors, really common problem. You might play daily boundary games, rehearsing calmness and staying power and impulse control, making it really fun to play a variety of games based around their bed and different boundaries, okay? Whereas a hyper puppy might get daily scatter feeding with down regulation moments to lower arousal whilst still growing optimism. And the best part is you can do most of this stuff in just little 5-minute bursts here and there. These aren't big structured sessions. They're literally bite-sized little brain workouts, and they're fun. Your dog has no idea that they're doing therapy, basically. They just think you're playing the best games in the world. They're having a great time. The only difference is these games are intentional. And so over time, you actually achieve deep, lasting change that makes your lives together so much more enjoyable and easy for the both of you. Because this approach really is working from the inside out. You're not suppressing behavior because you're replacing it fundamentally at the root. If you think of traditional training as like putting a lid on a boiling pot, concept training comes along and it just turns down the heat. It's also empowering for owners because you don't need perfect timing or really advanced handling skills, literally just a willingness to play and learn. It is flexible and adaptable. It suits puppies, rescues, working breeds, anxious dogs, over the top teens, all of your dogs. All of your dogs are going to enjoy this. It's emotionally intelligent because it acknowledges the emotional state underneath behavior, which so many strategies completely ignore. And it treats the dog as a whole being. So you are really solving your dog's problems at a fundamental, long-lasting level. Another fantastic thing to note about concept training is we're not just talking about problem solving, it's preventative. If you raise your dog from puppyhood with this methodology at the forefront of your approach, your dog is far less likely to develop problem behaviors in the first place because they've rehearsed better coping strategies and more optimal behavior choices from day one. So, if you want to embrace concept training, where do you start? Well, here's some quick and dirty tips for you, okay? Number one, just change your lens. Stop asking, how can I stop my dog doing this thing? And start asking, let's look at this problem. What concept is my dog missing here, and how can I grow it? Number two, start small. It's really easy to make this overwhelming when it really doesn't need to be. Pick one concept. Maybe it's calmness if your dog struggles to settle, and just build in 2 short games a day to develop it. That's it. And like I said, if you don't know what those games are, there's a whole downloadable pack of games and exercises on my website. Number three, make it fun. Honestly, drop the pressure. There's no obedience test to pass at the end of this. This isn't about being perfect. This isn't about the end result. It's about growing together and just falling in love with the process along the way. Okay? So here's the big idea I want to leave you with today. Behaviors are an output. If you want to change the output, you've got to change the software it's running on. Concept training gives us a way to train not just what our dogs do, but who they become. It honors the science of the brain. It builds emotional intelligence, and it creates dogs who are resilient, confident, and calm, not just robotically obedient. And for us as owners, it turns training into connection and into progress and growth that everyone can enjoy. Okay, that's enough of me for today, I think. If you found this episode interesting, useful, helpful in any way at all, I would love for you to share it with a friend, leave a review. It's free, it's quick, it makes a huge difference to creators like me trying to deliver free, empowering content to dog owners around the world. And if you have any questions or any comments, you are always more than welcome to slide into my DMs. Let me know what resonated, or let me point you towards some useful free resources if you're keen to learn more. There's loads of stuff on my website. There's a full blog, jam-packed full of articles, a lot of them about concept training. You can go and read it all for free. But for now, I shall leave you to enjoy the rest of your walk or whatever it is you're up to in peace. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you same time next week for another episode of The Walk and Talk.